What's up, everybody? Today we're going to finish the last major part of the book club app, and it is the book club history. So when we click on it, we'll see all the books we previously had, be able to click into each one and see the reviews. Also, I know this UI doesn't look too great, but it's functional, and that's all I really cared about. We can make it look prettier later on. Alright, let's get right into it. So the first thing we need is a new model for the review model. I can't spell. And there. So in this class, we'll have the review model, and inside we're going to need three things: the user ID, the rating for the book, and the actual review that the person leaves. So then we add in all the constructors. And then I'm also going to add a name constructor from document snapshot. And we're going to have to pass in the document snapshot, of course. Document snapshot, document, and in there, user ID is equal to doc.document ID. Rating is equal to doc.data rating. We're doing all this just to make it easier for us later on in the video. Doc.data review. So whenever we get the review from Firebase, we'll be able to just call the from document snapshot, and it'll create our instance exactly how we want it. So once we actually have our review model set up, let's create the actual screens. So I already have like folders for it. We can have the book history .dart file in here, and then inside the local widgets we're going to have each book. So the reason for that is you saw there was a list of all the books, but you don't want to have all that code. Well, I don't want to have all that code in one file. So each card that you saw was in the each book file. And then it's going to need to be a stateful widget, and we're going to call it book history. And import material.dart, and then we can save it. So in our book history page, we're going to want to pass in the group ID. The reason for this is that we need to get all the history for that specific group. This group ID. So with that group ID, we'll be able to retrieve the whole collection of all the books stored in here. Now if we look at this one has more. So we'll be able to retrieve this whole list, all these documents. So we also need to create a scaffold for this. And then body is going to return a future builder. The reason we need a future builder is because we're going to be returning, we're going to call the database to retrieve all the books at that time. And then once it's done is when we want to actually display the list of books. So right now we don't have defined the list of books yet. Let's define it. So future, and then list of book model. I'm going to call that books. So that is the future we're going to be waiting on. If you don't know about the future builder, I have a video about this, so you can check it out. And we're going to retrieve it in the did change dependencies. And in here we also want to make it asynchronous, since we are calling the database. So our list of books is going to call from the db future file that we have, and it's going to be called get history. And inside we need to pass the group ID. Perfect. So we have a problem here. Our get history isn't defined. So let's go define that real quick. Actually, let's name it Get Book History instead, just so we can tell it apart easily. So now in our DB future, we can create a function that returns a future list of book models. We can call it Get Book History. And inside we need the group ID. And that should be it. Make it asynchronous, of course, since it's a function call. And then let's start writing that function. So we need to create a list first of all in order to be able to add to it. And we're going to make it a growable list. And then inside, just like every asynchronous function, we should do a try catch and print any errors. And then return retval. Now inside the catch, we need to have a query. That's not how you spell it. Query snapshot. Query and then await. Firestore. There. Firestore. Dot collection groups. Inside the groups, we have a document named by the group ID. And then there has a collection called books. And we want to get those documents. So that's our query. One thing I'm going to do though is we're going to order by, and if you see, every book has a date completed. So we're going to order by the newest book should be on top. So in order to do that, you just do date completed and descending is true. Alright, so this query snapshot will have all the documents inside our books collection. But that's not the return type we need, so we gotta make sure we put it in a list. And we'll do that by taking our query, getting all the documents, and then for each of the document, we're going to add it to our return value. And then we're going to add to that list a book model object. And from document snapshot, we're going to get doc, and then we're going to pass the element to it, which is each document snapshot. And I'll add it to this list and then return it for us. So we see we no longer have this error here, and our future builder needs a builder thing. So right, we have an asynchronous snapshot of type list book model. And in here, we can define what we want to do with all that. So if our snapshot connection state is connection state.done, which means we're done loading this future and we're ready to do whatever else is needed, then we will return a listview.builder. If it's not done loading, we want to return a center with a child of circle progress indicator. So we know that it's loading. And now here's the little tricky part. So in our listview.builder, I need a build context and index. And then in here, we're going to return in each book object. So again, we have a problem with that because there's no such thing as each book. But we will define it here. Each book. Alright, so now to set up the each book, we're going to change this container to our shadow container that we've been using. Inside we'll have a child of column, and of course some children. So we need to pass two things in, and it's the book model, that specific book, and also the group ID. Alright, so then the children, for now we're just going to add some simple text widgets. And have book.name and book.author, just so we know we have everything working for now. And then the book history, we need to import this, and we need to pass in a book of snapshot.data. No, snapshot.data for the specific index that we're at currently. And then we also need to pass the group ID, which we just get from widget group ID. Give it a name, of course. Group ID, widget group ID. Alright. So let's launch and make sure everything's working up to here. Alright, so we're on our book club screen. If we click the book club history, we see some problems. Okay. Invalid range. So we need to give our item count a snapshot .data.length. So now that should go away. There. So this looks okay, but they're too clumped up. They're not really spaced out. And also, we want a back button here. So one easy hack for that is we add a +1 to the length. And then in the item builder, if index is equal to 0, we return a back button. But you see that's kind of ugly, it's in the middle. And then otherwise, if we have this, we return index -1. So hopefully that error goes away. But you see this is in the middle, it's still kind of ugly. You can fix that easily by wrapping it in a row. And then also wrapping it again in some padding. And let's give it 10. So there, our back button looks a little bit better. Now I want to space these out a bit too because they're a little too clumped up. So wrap this one in a padding as well. Edge insets, we're going to do this one. So when we do the top and bottom, you don't have any problems. And there we go. It's a bit more spaced out. It looks a little better. So now we just need to work inside the cards to make it actually look okay. So for our text, we're going to give it a bit of style. Font size, we're going to give it 30. And font weight, we're going to give it font weight.bold. So there we go. And then for this one, we're going to give it some style as well. And we're going to make the font size 20 on this one. And we're also going to change its color to colors.gray 200. And 200 was the wrong number, I meant 600. You could actually see it then. There. So now the very last step. If you saw at the beginning, we had a button underneath that leads to your reviews. And we create our model for reviews. So we're going to give it a bit of space. Let's say height 10. And then we're going to have a raised button with a child of text that says reviews. So there we go. And now once we click on reviews, we're going to make sure we take it to the review and pass in the actual book and group ID. So we could be able to reference, if you look at the database, we have our book. And let's see if we can find one's reviews. So we have a reviews collection. And in order to get to this reviews collection, we need the book ID. And we also need a group ID. So those are the two things we're going to need to pass to the review screen. We have both of those things. So on pressed, and have a function called go to review history. And then up here, we'll define that function. Go to review history, and we'll need a build context. And inside a simple navigator dot push. And our route will be the actual review screen. Material page route builder context, and we're going to call it review history. Now, like I said, we want to pass two things: a group ID, which is just group ID, and the book ID, which we will get from our book.id. So there we go. We have our go to review history set up. Now all we need to do is create a page for review history, and I'll just fast forward through that because it's exactly the same as book history, and each book we're going to have review history, and we're going to have each review. So it's literally going to be a copy paste from that. So I was almost done with this review page, and I remembered one more thing that was a little different from the books, so I thought I would share it. So if you remember, our review model didn't have the name of the user who left the review. We only had the user ID. So in each review, we're going to retrieve the name of that user whose UID we have. And you see now, so what I have set up is just the rating and the review. But also, we want to add a text. Jeez, I cannot type. Above this text, we want to also add the name of the user that left the review. So in order to get that, we need to have a user model, and then do the same thing, did change dependencies. Of course, it didn't import. And then in here, just retrieve that user. Nothing's importing for me. There's a get user. And inside, I need to give the widget review dot user ID. And that should retrieve it for us. And then also we need to call a set state after it is retrieved. So now above all these texts, we're going to display text that checks whether the user is null or not. And if they are, well, if it isn't null, display user.fullname. Otherwise, just display loading. So there we go. And then let's give it a bit of style as well, like we've been doing. Font size 30 and font weight bold. Oh man, come on. Now that should be perfect. Now it just shows loading because we need to go back to the screen and repress it. And there we go. We have the user. And actually, let's give it a little bit of space between that. I know I'm not really worried about how the looks of this too much because obviously it doesn't look amazing. But it's functional. We see it, and we have all the reviews and all the books in ordered by the time they were read. So now the core features of the app are completely finished. You can see the reviews for each book, the history, and obviously all the main stuff we did here. So after this, we're going to have one more live stream, I believe, where we will add little things like error handling. For example, if nobody picked the next book and it's time for it to switch. Or things like being able to copy your group ID, since there's no way to invite people other than giving them your group ID, and no way to know that within the app. We need to have a way for them to copy that group ID and send it to their friends so they could join that group. And then we're also going to implement a way to leave this group and be able to join another group. So alright, that's it for this video. This code will be on GitHub like always. If you have any questions or anything, leave it in the comments. Like, subscribe, and share if you enjoy the video. And thanks for watching.